Hello, everybody, and welcome to OnCrawl's SEO in Orbit webinar series. This is the first ever series sending SEO into space for real. SEO in Orbit is a series of webinars running through June 24th, taking you on tour of the galaxy of technical SEO. And at the end of the series, we'll send all of the top tips from each episode into space for real on June 27th. And today's SEO in Orbit is how to grow money pages from orphan pages. So we'll take questions at the end of the webinar, and you can ask them at any time in the webinar chat box or on Twitter using the hashtag OnCrawlInOrbit. So I'm François. I'll be your host for this episode. I'm the founder of technical SEO data platform OnCrawl, and I'm the typical SEO nerd. So I'm very pleased to have our guest today for how to grow money pages from orphan pages, who is Enge. Eric was named in 2018 Search Personality of the Year at the Drum Search Awards, and in 2016 Search Personality of the Year at the US Search Awards and Search Marketer of the Year at the Landies. Eric has been speaking about digital marketing for more than a decade, and he keynotes many conferences every year. He's the lead co-author of The Art of SEO, and he writes columns in sites like Search Engine Land and Moz. Eric is currently a GM of digital marketing Perficient, where he is business unit of content marketing, SEO, and social media services. And prior to Perficient, Eric was the founder and CEO of Stone Temple Consulting that I believe all of you guys know. It's a digital marketing agency based in Massachusetts, which was bought by Perficient in July 2018. Welcome, Eric, to that webinar. I'm very pleased to have you. How are you?
I'm doing great, and thanks for having me, François. I'm looking forward to the conversation today.
Cool. I know three fun facts about you, Eric. Can you confirm that? In 1984, you won a world championship in football?
Yes. So the foosball is what in the United States it's effectively table football or table soccer, as we call it here, but. Yes, I did win the world championship in one of the events in foosball.
Okay, cool. So this is the first time on an SEO podcast we have the world champ attending an SEO podcast. Cool. And second fun fact, you have camped outside in northern Minnesota on the Canadian border in February, right?
Yes, it got as cold as minus 30 degrees. And in fact, at one point, it was just me, 5 Boy Scouts, the Scoutmaster, and then one guide. And at one point, the guide took a boiling pot of hot water, threw it in the air, and it came down as snow.
Wow.
Because at minus 30, by the way, minus 30, sorry, that's Fahrenheit, but that is roughly speaking about minus 35 Celsius. So it's cold.
Okay, wow. I was born on the ocean side, so I can't imagine how cold it was. Crazy. And I believe there's another crazy thing about you, that you have walked like 25 feet across red hot cold in bare feet. Do you think it's a game?
Yeah, so I was actually attended once a Tony Robbins event where one of the things he does is he gets everybody to do that and teaches you how to do it, and so there's a way that you do that so that you get across successfully, and I did. I walked across in bare feet. In fact, right before I started to cross, they shoveled fresh orange hot coals. They gave it like 15 seconds to cool off a little bit, but I had the maximum heat coals possible when I did this. And but the good news is the soles of your feet aren't actually particularly good conductors of heat, but you still have to do it the right way, or else you get severe burns.
Okay, so you are pushing the limits, and you are also pushing the limits in in SEO. So today we're gonna talk about orphan pages. So let's go back to our main topic today. Before we start, Eric, can you define what are orphan pages for the SEO crew that is listening to be aware about what we are talking about?
Yeah, I mean, basically, an orphan page is a page on your site to which receives no links from your site. So it just kind of sits out there by itself, not something that would naturally be found, by a crawl of the site. And Google tends to frown on these pages if they start ranking because it's not really part of your website ecosystem. So that's why it could be an issue.
Okay, so let's start with a softball question. If orphan pages are not linked to in the structure of your site, a crawler-based audit won't discover them on its own. So what are the best ways to find those orphan pages?
Yeah, well, so it's a tough problem, right? Because simply crawling the site, isn't therefore going to help you find the pages. But there is a role that crawling plays in this, which is you want to crawl your site so you can see all the pages that are found through the links on the site. And then hopefully the tools that are used to build the site can help give you insight into all the URLs that are being generated. So maybe those tools naturally spit out a sitemap file for you, or maybe you can get it to do that, or give you a list of such URLs. And if you can do that, you can compare that list with the URLs that come from the crawl, and you can see the things that are in the list of pages generated, but your crawl didn't find. And that difference is, in theory, pages that are orphan pages.
Okay, thanks. And at OnCrawl, of course, we help people find those orphan pages, comparing logs and crawl data and analytics data and stuff like that. And we have many cases. But in your experience, Eric, what is the most orphan pages you have ever found on a website? Do you have a very pathologic kind of website or an example to share?
Yeah, so, well, I know one case. I can't actually share the company name, but I had one situation where the company had more than 100 million orphan pages, pages that were not in the general link graph of the site. They cross-linked to each other, by the way, but they weren't in the general link graph of the site. It was, well, let's put it this way. It was an impressive set of pages, and they ran into problems because of it.
Okay. And so there are essentially two options to handle orphan pages once you found them. The first option applies to pages that have no traffic from users or from bots. That can be set to 410 gone or redirected permanently to another page. Do you have a preference for 410 statuses or for redirects?
So I think there's a lot of detail that goes into answering that question well, and I always like to say that the best answer to any SEO question starts with two words. Those two words are, it depends. And in this case, if you have pages that you can argue are providing some level of value, now we'll talk separately in a moment or two about what I mean by value. Let's say you agree that they're providing some value, then you should start to link to them, and you should wrap them into the overall link graph of your site. If you have pages that you can get clear in your mind are offering no value, then I would probably delete them, 404 or 410 them, and just pull them out of the picture entirely.
Yeah, and I think you're totally right, because I believe the first question to ask is the situation normal? If I'm having some orphan pages, if they add value, as you said, on my website, is it normal, or is it just a mistake? Because someone has deleted some links to those pages. So yeah, I believe you're totally right. This is the very first question to ask. And however, orphan pages that earn traffic are another story, right? What does it mean for an orphan page to have traffic?
Well, so one of the things to ask is, well, if there's no links to it, how would Google ever discover it, right? Well, there are ways, and I kind of alluded to one of them. A lot of times the programs that you use, or the CMS or the e-commerce platform or whatever that you use to generate the pages for your site, will spit out an XML sitemap for you. So your XML sitemap might contain the URLs, even though they're orphan pages, and so Google could discover them that way. Google can also discover URLs by other ways. So maybe one of the URLs gets shared in a marketing campaign. And sometimes you run into these situations where the orphan pages they're orphaned from the rest of the site, but maybe they all link to each other. So if one gets discovered, then the rest get discovered. So there are ways that orphan pages can be discovered by Google. Their magic for crawling is, while they obviously have the world's most impressive crawler, the fundamentals aren't that different from what you guys do. They need to follow link trails, basically. But once Google discovers them, they can get into a situation where they're getting traffic. They might get ranked. And given that they're a fairly weak spot in the link graph, if they get ranked, it probably means they have good content.
Yeah. And would you draw different conclusions if there is only bot traffic or only organic traffic? Did you see such a behavior, or what's your opinion about that?
You're right, Francois. It happens all different ways. So if it's getting organic traffic, and let's just stipulate that what we mean is enough organic traffic to be interesting, then that's definitely a situation where you want to try to save the page. If it's getting bot traffic, Googlebot, for example, is coming to it, and it's getting no traffic, that almost worries me more than a page that gets no traffic and no Googlebot visits. Because if it's getting Googlebot traffic and not Googlebot visits, and it's getting no organic traffic, well, Google found it, but they didn't like it enough to rank it for anything that mattered. That's more likely to be seen as maybe a doorway page, or something spammy.
Yeah, and if you are in that situation, you are consuming your full budget on what we can call bad pages. So you're shooting yourself in the feet. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and that's a really good point too. Crawl budget is precious, right? And especially if you have a lot of these kinds of pages, and a lot of crawl budget is being used on pages that are delivering no traffic. That's time that Google is spending on your site that's wasted, that could be spent by them crawling pages that deserve to rank. And it's just a really bad trade-off to have them crawling things that they get no traffic.
Yeah. Thanks for that, Eric. Do you have any advice on treating orphan pages that are getting some backlinks? Do you have a best practice to share on that?
Yeah, so it is really good to keep those pages that have gotten backlinks because, well, we all understand that links have value, right, in our world. That is definitely another piece of value. That's why when earlier I talked about whether a page has value. One value is getting organic traffic. The other is that it has links. Those are sort of the two big pieces. So the ones that have links, I would very much want to also include in, just wrap into the rest of the site. Or if you still feel like you want to kill the page because it's getting no organic traffic, at least redirect it to closest related page that you have on the main site.
Okay, and we usually say that we should reintegrate orphan pages with traffic back into the site structure. What is the advantage that being part of a site structure confers on a page?
So, well, I mean, obviously it gets links from the rest of the site and Google now. One way it's really good for people to think about this is that, as publishers of websites, as webmasters, Google relies on us to give it clues as to what pages on a site we think are most important. And the biggest clues we can give it is our internal link graph. So pages that we link to from the home page are probably the most important on the site, at least in some manner of speaking. Pages that are 4 clicks away from the home page are somewhat less important. Pages that have no links, to some degree we're saying are unimportant. So when we reintegrate it into the site's link graph and give it some clicks, we've changed that statement. We're now saying, oh, this at least has some level of importance. I'm willing to have users go to it. So it's just good for the page to do that.
Yeah, and following that question, in your experience, what improvements would you expect to see regarding your rankings and your overall SEO performance after relinking a page?
Yeah, well, links are good. We all know that. So I think it should have a better chance for ranking more keywords or ranking higher on the keywords it currently ranks for. And in theory, that should bring it more organic search traffic. Key thing that we should weave into this conversation, just to be complete, the presumption that I think we're both making here, and I just want to be clear on it for the audience, is that the pages have a reasonable degree of relevance to the rest of the site. So if your main site is, does movie reviews, and the orphan pages are about toaster ovens, it's so different that, some of the answers we've given previously, you'd have to reconsider. It's like, okay, I really want to have my toaster oven pages on my movie review site. But I think we've been presuming all along, and in most cases that I've ever seen, the orphan pages are actually very closely related and relevant.
Okay, and just going back for a minute regarding the fact we the orphan pages with no traffic, with no value added to your website, you might want to kill them. What's your opinion about this weapon of massive destruction that is the robots.txt, where you can put a disallow rule to delete completely the vast majority of your orphan pages? How do you consider that kind of technique?
I'm sorry, I didn't quite get that. You use robots.txt, you mean to block crawling of them?
My question was about using a rule in your robots.txt to force Google not to force Google to put a noindex on the orphan pages? You know, disallow rule in your robots.txt.
So there is capability. A lot of people don't know this with robots.txt to use actually use robots.txt to no index pages. I think pretty much any SEO is familiar with using robots.txt to block crawling. But it turns out you can direct Google to no index to pages. First things first, the official Google stance on this capability is it's not supported. However, as of now, it appears to work. So, so Google does have code where if it detects you indicating in robots text that you want some pages no indexed, it will honor that. But there's no guarantee that they will continue to honor it because it's not officially supported feature. So if you did want to no index the pages, my recommendation would be to do it with a normal on-page meta tag to do that, the meta robots tag. So that's what I would recommend for doing that rather than doing it in robots.txt. But it does bring up a whole other question. If you have pages that are orphaned and you're going to mark them with no index, then why do you have them? Now, there are reasons. You might have a section of your site that was used in a marketing campaign to promote some new product offering, and the URL was shared in email newsletters and press releases and things like that. But you didn't really intend it to be a part of the main site experience. So that kind of thing can happen, in which case you might want them no indexed. So it's a possible scenario.
Okay, thanks. And another question, Eric. How would you take advantage of the improved performance of a former orphan page? And can the improvement be distributed or trickled down to other pages or sections of your site?
So this is a question, if I were to expand it broadly, I could probably talk about it for 20 minutes. But the thing we have to realize is that beginning with March of 2018 and all the way through June 3rd, yesterday, Google has been doing a series of what they call core algorithm updates. There's been many things written about what those have been attempting to achieve. But I think it's fair to say that they've all been focused on user intent and overall site's ability to move to meet user intent. And the reason why I took this little bit of a diversion from your question is that my view on this is that sites that do a really good job of having a great depth and breadth of content have seen superior results through these updates and really strong growth, in some cases meteoric growth. Your orphan pages, if they add to the depth and breadth of your content on your site, because maybe they answer some very specific user questions. There may even be user questions that don't have much search volume. You have your pages for your main keywords, and then you have all these other pages that really answer much more specific, detailed things. If bringing your orphan pages really helps make your overall site content more robust, then it can help your whole site. And by the way, your whole site can help them, and because it's not just that pages and sites don't just get ranked one page at a time today. It's the whole experience you create matters. And if having these orphan pages come in and it adds to that depth and breadth of content, you've improved the overall site experience, and you've made yourself more attractive for Google to rank the site. And not just the pages, but other pages will benefit too.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Thanks for that, Eric. Finally, we have 4 quick questions. You need to answer it less than 1 minute. 4 quick questions before we move on to the Q&A. First one is, do you have a favorite technical trick?
Oh, goodness. I saw that you were going to ask me this question, and I thought about it a little bit. And it's like, okay, François wants me to come up with a hack of some sort. And, to be honest, I think I don't have a great answer to that one. Let me think about that.
Okay. Next question, so that you can think about the first one. The second one, but I believe you'll skip that one as well, which is a least favorite technical question that you often get asked. You have something that you don't like to be asked about?
So, well, I have a number of times people come to me. One recent one is somebody asked me about, if I put machine readable entity IDs on my site, how much will my search traffic go up? And so there's this whole class of questions where people are basically, thinking, oh, I'll just do some very specific remote technical thing, and suddenly my SEO traffic will double. And it's like, yeah, it's not that simple. Did you create user value? It's not like, gee, I made my font size bigger and suddenly my traffic went up or something. And I get these questions a lot.
Okay. Next one. Do you have a favorite Googlebot?
A favorite Googlebot? Oh my. Well, I mean, you mean like Googlebot mobile or?
yeah, or Speakable or Google-image, whatever you like.
Well, I mean, hey, I make most of my living in regular organic search, so I guess that makes me very simple. But you know what? Googlebot-image is going to become more and more important. This visual search thing, this whole idea of searching via images, using your camera for discovery and things like that, is going to be really big. And most people don't realize how big Google image search is. It's something like 20% of all search. If you look at data from folks like JumpShot that Rand Fishkin shares from time to time, it's huge.
Yeah, you're totally right. I can't say the name, but we've encountered that very big e-commerce player. When we analyzed where their traffic was coming from with different data sources like JumpShot, we've encountered that like half of their sales were coming from Google image queries. So this is, and they've worked a lot on that, and they have terrific results. So there are definitely some people that might consider to optimize for Googlebot-image as well.
Yep, absolutely. Well, and the new features, 3D images feeding into augmented reality, or the high resolution images feature that they announced at Google I/O are going to be big.
Yeah, and plus, I believe Google is data mining, the different clicks between two product pages when you're browsing from their Google Images search engine visual pages, so that they are learning what people like if they are searching for that particular product. So might be interesting to look at some stuff around this. Next question and the last one before the Q&A. Eric, we are sending SEO into space. So do you have a favorite planet?
Oh, that's interesting. Gotta say Saturn.
Okay, why?
Basically, or Jupiter, actually. Either one. I mean, just because of all the moons they have. I love, there's so much to explore there. It's not only do you have those massive planets, but you have all these actual real worlds orbiting around them, and that's really cool.
Okay, thanks a lot for being with us, Eric. We're gonna follow up with the Q&A, so I'm gonna ask Rebecca to share the questions we have in the chat box. But waiting for that, I've got a question from Remy Nestasio on Twitter. He is asking, how do you treat orphan pages with incoming backlinks, but for content, like, for example, duplicate content issues? Do you use 301 redirection or trying to improve the content and link them back to the site structure? What's your advice on that case?
So my first reaction would be to try to improve the content. So it's a very good question, by the way, because Remy's question quite rightly calls out that there's so many different scenarios to talk about. But I would try to improve the content, and it's only if I didn't feel like that was practical would I, recommend maybe just 301 redirecting it and killing it that way and sending the link to somewhere else.
Okay, thanks. Rebecca, do we have any more questions? Okay, I've got a question for you before we get okay, we've got one. What's your stance on what North Face with regards to Google image search and Wikipedia?
You're asking about the North Face thing?
Yeah, with regards to Google image search and Wikipedia.
Yeah.
From Robert Dawson Goodman.
Yeah, so that was a very unfortunate incident. Sometimes brands try to do things, even respected brands. The web is a complicated place, right? And not everybody lives in it every day like we do and understands the ecosystem and what's right and what's wrong to do. And I think they made a mistake. I can't, comment on the internal culture at the company because I don't know. But yeah, I mean, you could do these things. And by the way, Wikipedia is pretty good at defending itself. They have a lot of things. People don't realize how many tools they have to figure out whether brands are editing their own pages when they're not supposed to be and things like that. That ecosystem is very strong and was able to successfully, fend off this program. I mean, obviously it got to a certain stage, right? But they were able to push back and boot them out.
Yeah. I've got a question for you, Eric. You said during our conversation that crawl budget was precious. What is because we talked about orphan pages and we know that the main point with poor orphan pages is the main question is about crawl budget. How do you feel? What's your opinion about how mature is the SEO community regarding crawl budget? Do you see people really aware of that, or is it something that is a part of the very geeky technical SEO guy, or do you see that people have much for such issues? And what's your opinion about that? Because I know you're advising many customers.
Yeah, so I do think that for the really deep veteran SEO types, that there's a good understanding of it, but I think it gets very weak very quickly once you move outside that inner circle. So we see a lot of people who misunderstand crawl budget. But it was good that you asked this question because it made me think of a technical Trek feel.
Okay, cool.
Crawl budget. We worked with a site that has had 200 million web pages. And the reason it had that many web pages, it had a very involved and complex faceted navigation. And what we did is we got them to take like the sort orders and filters in their faceted navigation and re-implement those with Ajax.
Okay.
So that for sort orders and filters, and actually some of their facets, basic facets for features, you no longer needed to create a new web page. So we reduced the size of the site from 200 million web pages to 200,000. We reduced it by 1,000 to 1 factor. In the near term, what happened is that their traffic dropped 50%. That doesn't sound like what you wanted to happen, right? But I had actually predicted that they would see a drop because it's such a large change, in the overall structure of the site. And given the way Google crawls, they don't crawl like you guys do. You don't just start at the top and crawl all the way until you're done. It doesn't work that way. They sample these pages and they come back and get some other pages, and some of the pages they get today were the ones they also got them yesterday, the day before. It can take Google a long time to understand what's happened to a site. And when you take a site and you go from 200 million pages to 200,000, it's such a large change. But they recovered within 4 months, and within 8 months, their traffic was double. Double.
Okay.
Just because we set up the site to have a dramatically more efficient use of the crawl budget. Because all those pages we eliminated were things that really weren't going to rank for anything. So they were valuable to users, and users could still get that content. It's just via Ajax, they're getting on the same URL.
Okay, nice. Thanks for that. A question from Johnny Hill that is jumping on the fact you mentioned entity ID. So she's asking, are you using the entity ID when implementing schema.org? Why or why not?
So, well, it's useful. I called it out as saying, people, saying, oh, I'm going to implement entity IDs and my traffic will double. It won't do that. But anytime you use something like schema or, the entity IDs, that, it's useful. It's useful because it gives you, or gives the bots that are visiting your site just faster confirmation you are who you say you are. They can connect it with other structured data that they have about you more quickly. It strengthens that association and it increases confidence. So I think they're useful to use. Just don't have overinflated expectations of how useful.
Okay, thanks. So this webinar is coming to an end, and I really thank you, Eric. It was great having you. Really appreciate our conversation. Um, Thanks a lot, guys. Thanks to the listeners for traveling with us today through this corner of the technical SEO space. Swing by OnCrawl.com for your switch file, and please join us for the next episode of SEO in Orbit on June 12th for unlocking the secrets of indexing with our guest, Kevin Indig. You can get the full agenda on OnCrawl.com/SEO in Orbit. Feel free to connect with us. Feel free to follow Eric Enge on Twitter and attend his conference because there are always some terrific things to learn from Eric. Thanks for being with us, Eric. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me, François.
Thanks. Have a nice day, everyone, or a nice evening. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.